The lower it is an indication that the system is getting healthier and healthier. And if you look at what was the UCLF recorded over the past 7 days, you see that we've been averaging at about 10,500 megawatts. So essentially we're saying 10,500 megawatts of capacity that is installed was not available on account of various reasons, units failing and units not performing at their optimal capacity. And if you are to compare this with the same period last year, it's an improvement of about 5,000 megawatts. So that's significant from where we have started, and that's why we have been able to keep the lights on for a considerable period of time. And also what is important here is to juxtapose this performance against the summer outlook of Eskom. So we have a baseline of about, I think it's about 13,000 megawatts or so. If we achieve 13,000 megawatts, the optimistic case, 13,000 megawatts of UCLF, then it means that we won't have load shedding. What we are seeing now is even a 3,000 megawatts improvement on our own outlook, and it's thanks to the work that Eric, led by Bheki Nxumalo, are doing at Eskom. So it's important that we are able to consistently improve this kind of results. Of course, in numbers terms, it means that there's less and less reliance on diesel to power our electricity requirements. And in rand value terms, I mean, you can see that compared to the same period last year, same period starting 1st of April to the 17th of October, we had spent about 18 billion rands of diesel just to keep the lights on. So if you are to compare it with the period this year, 2024, 1st of April to 17th of October 2024, that number is about 12 billion less than what we had attained last year. So it's a significant shift. And in fact, we are sustaining it 66% below what was the same period last year. So if you like, there's a structural shift. What do I mean by structural shift? Is that there's less and less reliance on diesel. And if you look at the load factor, the percentage of time that we're relying on diesel, the same period last year, we're sitting at about 8.95%. And this year we are sitting at about 4.59%. And of course, this improvement in the health of Eskom is going to be passed on to the end consumer. Remember that when you determine the tariff structure is also a function of your fuel sources. So if there's less and less reliance on diesel, it means that Eskom will make, if you like, lesser tariff applications to NERSA because they are becoming more and more efficient. And in fact, the expectation of the regulator and the legislation is that Eskom must be an efficient generator. So we're getting to that stage. We're taking small steps, but significant in the context of where we're coming from. So I thought it's important that we're able to do that reality check. But the big message I want to convey to the country is that it's an anomaly for us to celebrate the fact that there's 208 days of no load shedding. That should be. The standard is that there shouldn't be any load shedding. And in fact, the standard should further suggest that you should not rely on expensive fuel sources for you to keep the lights on. So I thought it's important that I make that point, so we do have that appreciation that really this is not an achievement. It's a step in the right direction. An achievement will be when there's absolutely no load shedding. And in fact, we are able to use cheaper forms of electricity generation for us to keep the lights on. And that's where the Independent Power Producer Program comes in. You know that it was introduced in August of 2011. So this is a disciplined way of government going out into the public through a transparent and competitive bidding process to procure cleaner forms of electricity generation. So the first generation of these bid windows were focusing on PV and wind. Like I said, now we've had a cycle of 9 bid windows since the inception of the program in August of 2011. Trailblazing, transformational development with the office that we think that the opportunities are vast going into the future. And with the introduction of the NTCSA, better alignment on this procurement of renewable or cleaner forms of energy generation, supporting and following the transmission development plan, is going to help us to accelerate the onboarding of renewable energy generation capacity. I've made the point that the 7th administration, the Energy and Electricity Department, is going to accelerate this procurement program. And in fact, we want to be aggressive, and I'll show you some of the interventions, having engaged with the developers, the financiers, the stakeholders in this ecosystem, some of the proposals that have come through, and they are receiving our urgent attention on how best to improve this procurement program so that we're able to realize our ambitions. And of that 9 bid windows, we have had 141 preferred bidders appointed, and the total of these preferred bidders is about 13,422 megawatts. So that's significant. It doesn't necessarily follow that the entire 13,422 megawatts is operational, and in fact, of that 13,422 megawatts, about 7,335 megawatts are operational, coming from 95 projects of those 141 projects. And of course, it includes our peakers that Ben Diesel, Avon, and Didiza are part of the first generation of, if you like, the IPPs that we're able to procure. And then what is under construction is about 1,897 megawatts, and this comes from 17 projects. And we also know that there's 1,183 megawatts from 9 projects that are preparing to reach commercial and financial close. But for me, what is telling about the prospects and the opportunities that lies ahead is that there's 8,231 megawatts capacity currently in the market to be evaluated between now and next year. So that's significant. So you can see that there's a ramp up of this program, but from where I'm standing, I don't think that it is enough. I think that we should be multiplying this. What that multiplication is a conversation we're having with the IPP office, having with all the players in the ecosystem. So one of the things that we have achieved in the first few days of the 7th administration was our ability to exploit our convening power and call everyone in this space into one room so that we can critique, if you like, the 9 bid windows and see how best each and everyone can contribute towards a very efficient and seamless procurement of a renewable energy program. And I'll highlight some of the interventions that are under consideration. I'm confident that in the next 4 to 5 weeks we'll come out to the market with a degree of certainty on those reforms that we're introducing, the improvements that we're making to ensure that we're able to accelerate this program. This program is important because we have said to the rest of the world that we see ourselves contributing a reduction of anything between 350 to 420 million tons of CO2 equivalent per annum going into the future as part of our ambition to decarbonize, the commitments we've made at the COP as part of our nationally determined contribution. So it's important that we must accelerate this, and we're going to de-risk energy generation just from a monopoly that is Eskom, and then we're able to have multiple generators of electricity in the country. So we've seen what are the downside of a monopoly. So when a monopoly fails, it drags the entire country with it. So we've seen the challenges, Eskom overexposed as a country, Eskom significant generation capacity, 100%. Of course, it has come down about 90% of total generation coming from Eskom. If Eskom fails, then it means that the electricity generation fails. So it's important that we are able to reform, introduce other players, and we are able to de-risk, and that's the direction that we are taking. I really want to commend the team at the IPP office led by Mr. Bernard Magoro and his exceptionally competent team. One of the things that the team have done, especially looking at the first 3 bid windows, was to say that there's an opportunity to refinance this project, because if you look at the bid windows, already they are 6 years into operation, 7 years into operation. A lot of them, of those first generation of projects, have already paid their debts. So there's an opportunity for us to negotiate a refinancing instrument. I want to congratulate the team that as a result of that innovative approach, we've been able to see that the refinancing has been able to give us savings of about 5.1 billion rands. And of course, part of that gets to be passed on to the end consumer over a period of time. Of course, half of that sits with the project developers and half of it IPP, and by extension, if you like, the consumer. So that's the kind of innovative work that the team has done over a period of time, so that we're able to first green the South African economy, make sure that the electricity is affordable. And it's those little steps that the team has been able to master that over a period of time is going to give us the kind of results that we want to achieve. Remember that one of the big areas of conversation, big areas of attention, the focal point of the ministry is to ensure that we are able to reduce the cost of electricity in the country, make businesses competitive, and ensure that we cushion the household. What do we know in rand value terms in relation to the health of this program? The first thing I want to convey is that there's a significant market confidence even outside the borders of the country. So from all over the globe, there have been significant players who have come and bidded into this program. They have participated in this program. We have seen companies coming from Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Spain, Turkey, and Denmark that have also participated. We have seen companies coming from Saudi Arabia, Japan, Korea, have also participated. So I think it's important that we've got just a general appreciation of the confidence that the market has, and the market, not just the domestic market, but the international market, on the credibility of the program that is run by the IPP office. And I really want to congratulate the team of men and women, exceptionally talented engineers, accountants, and lawyers. They've been able to be very clinical, transparent in the manner in which we've been able to run this program, and that's why there's increased market confidence. And of course, out of this, we have seen investments of about 272 billion rand. But something that is understated in this is that only 18% of that 272 billion rand comes from outside, from those countries that I've mentioned. And in fact, 82% of these investments come from the South African commercial banks, comes from our own DFIs in the form of the IDC and the DBSA. So that's talking to, if you like, the robustness and the resilience of the South African finance community. So I think this is important, that the first people to show confidence in the program, even before there's international interest, is our own domestic markets. And these domestic markets have come and they've been able to, if you like, invest in these programs. And for me, that's one of the biggest highlights. So I think it's important that when you do this balance sheet of what has been the success of this program, the focus is not just on the megawatts. Of course, the megawatts are important for obvious reasons. We want the lights on, we want the economy to grow. But what has been the opportunity that has been created for domestic capital to be able to invest in this program. And this is something for me that is commendable. Of course, I made the point that there's about 8,250 megawatts of these projects that are either in operation or in construction. I think one of the things that are telling about these statistics, I mean, we're doing a geographic mapping of where these projects are. The first one is that it's something we've been stating over a period of time. I think there's been oversubscription in your Cape provinces, the Northern Cape, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape, because that's where you find your optimal renewable energy sources. Your irradiation levels, Northern Cape, exceptionally better than any other place in the country. The wind speeds, the efficiency there, your Cape provinces, exceptionally better than any part of the country. And you can see there's been a concentration of investments in those areas. So the density of these projects sits in there. But we know that we've got other capacity in other parts of the country. And you can see that KZN outside the peaker, which really uses diesel. There hasn't been any renewable energy program in that country, in that part of the country, that province. So it's important that there has to be alignment of where the capacity is and the resource to ensure that we are able to accelerate this procurement program. But essentially what we are trying to illustrate is that almost every province has benefited, but I've made the point that the concentration of these benefits really is in the Cape provinces. And it's something that working with the NTCSA, working with the markets, the developers, the financiers, we are able to suggest that there's a way that we can direct and manage this program going forward as we're looking for the NTCSA to build the kind of capacity that is necessary to allow us to further exploit these resources. What is the point here is that these are geographically spread, of course, with the concentration in the Cape provinces. And then we have taken a major step forward. What is that major step forward? Remember that those bid windows that have been accounting for the 8,000 plus megawatts, so it's wind and solar. What we have done, and of course a bit of peaker there. What we have done now, we are going into the next generation of battery energy storage independent power producer program. This is important because it's going to help us to fully exploit the benefits of these renewables. We know during the day we've got the excess capacity. We can use that excess capacity to power the batteries. So essentially the batteries are storage, and then during the peak when we don't have wind, when we don't have sun, we draw from that stored capacity. And in that way, so it's able to flatten the profile of generation and availability, in that we are using technology to store this excess generation capacity. So bid window 1 projects have reached a commercial close. Bid window 1, of course, some of them are working towards a commercial close. Bid window 2, bids are already in evaluation phase. And what the team is doing is that they are doing the evaluation of these bids for battery, and they are also doing for the last bid window. So it just shows the capacity and the dynamic nature of the team, that over a period of time the team has been a bit more dynamic, a bit more agile in how we're able to evaluate these bids, and we're becoming more and more efficient, and thanks to the work that Mr. Magora is doing there with the team. And of course we identify the spine areas where there's no capacity, so essentially, if you like, grid capacity. So we are expanding, if you like, the renewable energy capacity in those areas. So you can see parts of the Northwest, the Free State, and the Cape provinces. So there's a science that underpins the work that the team is doing to ensure that as we grapple with the issues around the transmission development plan, there's things that we can do immediately. And battery storage offers a significant opportunity. And we expect the total of these bid windows is about 1,744. These are gradual steps, but I'm sure that we continue to perfect, get it right, and I'm sure we can go large scale so that we're able to benefit from this natural endowment. So storage is an important part of the conversation of the story for us to be able to ensure that it approximates base load conditions. And then an important feature of what we have observed over a period of time. So now we can do a longitudinal study, starting from 2011 bid window number 1, and then do an assessment 13 years later. What has been the improvement in the technology, and then that resulting in the price point. So we have seen that when we started with regards to solar, a kilowatt hour, it was coming in at about 4.66 cents. And today, as I speak to you, is coming in at about 56 cents kilowatt hour. So that's a decrease of about 88% over that period of time. And on the wind, what has been the price? We have seen that the first generation bid window 1 was coming in at about 1.93 cents kilowatt hour. Today, as I stand before you, it's coming in at about 58 cents kilowatt hour. So on the aggregate, if you pull them together, we have seen a price decrease of about 85%. So we're coming in at about 56 cents kilowatt hour. This is important. This is important outside the issues around greening, if you like, electricity generation. is going to translate into cheaper electricity over a period of time. So that's the point I'm making. So I think it's important that the story about the price point, the story about the effectiveness, the efficiency of these technologies is illustrated in this. Just our own experiences in South Africa before we draw from other international experiences. And of course, couple this with battery storage, I think we can get, if you like, maximum value out of this. Of course, as I make this point, I do acknowledge the technical limitation, the non-dispatchable nature of this technology, the fact that it's intermittent, but we have been able to illustrate as a country that it can be done. A transparent, competitive process. The prices have been coming down. Now we are introducing battery. We are de-risking any electricity generation away from Eskom and finding new sources of electricity generation. And hopefully over a period of time, we'll see that benefit trickling to the end consumer. The socio-economic impacts of these programs are important. So the point I'm making is that we are not going to decouple the conversation about the need for us to accumulate and acquire the megawatts necessary for us to power the South African economy and ensure that we are able to attain, if you like, energy security. But it's important that you are able to incorporate in this conversation, in this program, other elements that are able to ensure that we are able to achieve the transformational, if you like, ability or capability of this program. What are some of those significant features? 85,800 job opportunities created for South African citizens over a period of time. Of course, the peak of those job opportunities is during construction. I'm the first one to admit that once they're in operation, of course, the number of jobs, they come down, and they come down significantly. But you can't take away the fact that over that period, and especially the peak, we've been able to employ about 85,000 plus people. And of course, I made the point about the CO2 equivalent. We've got an ambition of greening the South African economy, have got an appreciation of our obligations as a country, contributing about a third of the emissions on the continent or in sub-Saharan Africa. So we've got a disproportionate amount of responsibility to ensure that we were able to contribute to the reduction. So the million tons offset of about 114.8 million tons that have been achieved since the inception of this program. And then the shareholding. So the money that resides with the South Africans of this total investment is sitting at about 37.7% of black South Africans. So it's important, and that's why I refer to the transformational aspects of this program, so that you are able to deracialize participation here. And thanks to our commercial banks, the DFI, they've sat behind these black shareholders, put their faith in them, and we are beginning to see the kind of results that are desired. And then something that is more impactful is communities. This land belongs to communities, so they must have equity in these programs. And of course, over time, we can continue to improve this aspect. But what we have achieved is there's 9% shareholding by local communities. And of course, the spend on the local content is about 76.6 billion rands, and of course the contribution of the socio-economic aspects to this work is about 3.8 billion rands, and then significant savings to water. If you were to compute, if we were to generate this outside using other technologies, would have spent about 135.7 million kiloliters of water if we had not gone through this program but relied on other technology sources. So this is the amount of contribution and development that we have seen over time, and the BEE spend is about 105 billion rand. So that's significant. The point we want to show to the country is that we are alive to the socio-economic impact as we continue to accelerate this program to give us the kind of results that are required. So those results are measured using multiple matrices, not just the megawatts, but what are the socio-economic impact, the participation of the local markets in this program. I've made the point, 82% of that 276 is, if you like, rand-based. So that's the kind of investments that have been made over time. So as I conclude, we think that there can be improvements. And this is a part of the conversations that we have had with the players in the space. We hosted a seminar where we brought the financiers, the project sponsors, the chaps who are sitting with the technology, the know-how, the engineers, the IPP office, the NTCSA, everyone in the public sector ecosystem to say, let's have this conversation. So there shouldn't be a separate discussion by the developers on the one hand, and then you have the financiers. Let's come into one room, because the success of this program is predicated on a seamless working relationship of the interest of the various players in that ecosystem. So I think it's important that we are able to address that. What are some of the issues that will come out now in the next few weeks to announce how best we are going to deal with them? And some of them are apparent, these things that we have known. So the first one is that working with Eskom, we will find ways to reduce your CELs and also your budget code timelines. So what we have seen is that the timeline that it takes for you to be able to obtain this is it's inordinate. So it undermines the bankability, the credibility, the efficiency of this program. So it's important that we are able to address this question. And this sits with us, if you like, SOE, Eskom, is in the stable of the private sector, so public sector rather. So it's in our interest that we should be able to truncate those processes. And in so doing, we are able to ensure that the projects reach financial close much quicker. And we know also that there's over 10 gigawatts of determined RE capacity, renewable energy capacity, that is currently available for reallocation in new bid windows. So we know that almost sterile, so we can reallocate this in the the new bid window. So in this way, you are able to ensure that before you talk even the next rounds, there's a 10 gigawatts that is sitting there. Of course, it's a function of the conversations with the NTCSA without necessarily putting them, if you like, in the limelight. One of the issues that requires attention is for them to look at this and how best they can contribute towards ensuring that we're able to free this gigawatts so that the economy can benefit from that. But it's a conversation we'll have with NTCSA. To the extent that this can be done, I'm sure that we'll be able to come out into the public and share with you how we're going to address this. And then there's an idea that we are entertaining to say that the next bid window should target the project that they already have secured the budget codes. So what we know is that there are delays, there are projects that are sitting with the budget codes, and of course they go through the same process as all other projects. But if you come to think of it, those who have an appreciation of how this procurement process works, is that your budget code is a critical milestone in you getting to commercial close. So we think that there's a way for us to nuance, if you like, this procurement process and ensure that those that have already secured budget codes, in fact, are the ones that are first online. Like I said, is that discussion we're having, but we are gravitating towards all of these things. The point I'm making is that there's an appreciation that there are things that you can do even before you announce the next bid windows that can be able to ensure that it restores or strengthens the confidence of the market in this program that we are running. And then the other point we are making is that there should be a geographic targeting of procurement rounds. So we know that there are corridors where the grid capacity is not there. I've made the point, KZN, outside the PICAS, there is no application in relation to renewables. So we know there are many parts of the country, especially inland and towards the north, where we've got grid capacity. So it might be possible that consistent with the transmission development plan that the CEO, NTCA, is working on, we are able to ensure that there's alignment. So there's alignment of the capacity and therefore direct the market in the right place. Because remember, the success of this program just strengthened the credibility. We have not been able to allocate close to 3,000 megawatts in the last bid window because of grid capacity. So people will not, the market will not have confidence in this program. So it's important that there's greater levels of alignment. The TDP that Mr. Skeepers is working on and the team, once they announce it, so that there's great deal of alignment. So we're not having separate conversations. So we have an appreciation that we are part of the ecosystem and we're able to identify where these opportunities are. And then there's a possibility of establishing a solar or wind parks. The Indians have gone this route, and I think the Saudis have gone this route. That it will work for us is something that the team is entertaining. What we call a solar park to ensure that we improve the state of readiness and success of this program, which could include programs that are combined with transmission strengthening and plans. So essentially, you carve out a huge hectares of land to say that here I'm going to do, if you like, solar parks. So generating gigawatts of energy. Of course, that should be aligned with the transmission development plan. So the point I'm making is that we're entertaining the multiple configurations on how we can improve this procurement going forward, so that that ambition of ensuring that they were able to accelerate renewable energy generation in the country gets to be realized. So it's drawn from a very deep and robust critique of the 9-bit windows. There are lessons to be learned and unlearned from there. We know there are things that we can do better internally. We're working on those. We have identified what those are. The NTCSA is an indispensable feature of that conversation. And then the market also have got its own obligations. And then there's an idea that we are entertaining of releasing separately RFPs for wind and PV. So we have seen in many instances that PVs will exhaust the grid capacity. Of course, this is also a function of curtailment. So these are the conversations we are having to say that for us to be able to better manage this competition, can we go out and just have a bid window just for wind, and then go out and just have a bid window for PV, so that we are able to manage the issues of grid access? And then we want to consider technology agnostic system requirements focused on bid windows. So we're not necessarily specific, so you can go out and say, this is the solution we want, without necessarily prescribing what the technology is. It's a conversation that we're having internally. We have learned from abroad that there are possibilities that presents as a result of what we call online auction models. And this, like I said, is drawn from international experience. These have been investigated, which are likely or will likely reduce the cost and timelines of bid evaluations. So it's important. There's a lot of investments that players invest in preparing these documents, putting together bids, and we think from the preliminary work that the team has done in relation to online auction, it's got the possibility of reducing, if you like, both the cost and time in relation to bid evaluation. And then we're looking at developing a credit see-through for IPP program and work with the DTIC. So if we have a see-through of what the pipeline looks like, I think the DTIC can design an instrument that can help us, of course, with the kind of legislation and policy instruments for us to be able to localize, if you like, the content of some of these components that goes into these programs. Of course, I did say that we have achieved some degree of localization. We think that we can do better. The only problem with the current process is a stop-start approach. So there's no way that you are able to build with some degree of confidence, if you like, elevated requirements for local content, because you don't know. You can't build industry on the basis of uncertainty. Capacity utilization will decline. Investments will be lost as a result of that. But if there's a see-through of how long the process will take, I think that industry will respond. And of course, the necessary policy instruments to make the possible for local content. Some of it might come at a premium with regards to the price point. But if you come to think of it, it's a premium that any country should be prepared to pay, because that premium, if you like, subsidizes job creation, subsidizes skills, subsidizes our ability to broaden the industrial flow, and also the national fiscus is able to benefit out of this. So that's a comprehensive set of consideration that will receive attention as part of these interventions that we are making. And then we make the point that there's a need for us to constantly communicate with the market in order to mobilize potential bidders to start the required process with regards to the BQ and the like. So one of the things that we have seen is our inability to communicate with the market. And I think that This pressure helps us to say to the market that this is the direction we are taking. These are some of the considerations we are making. We'll come back and articulate in the most absolute fashion what are these interventions that we are going to put in place to ensure that there's greater levels of efficiency and there's greater confidence in the program. We are able to onboard as quick as possible, and we are able to de-risk away from Eskom and achieve the conditions of energy security. So that's the direction that we are taking. So if you were to ask me, what is the, if you like, the overall performance of this program, I think is good. We want to take it to a point where it's excellent. And the team has done that, like I said, trailblazing, first generation of this kind of program on the continent, and the team has consistently tried to improve and perfect it. There's a point beyond which it requires executive authority, it requires greater levels of coordination and alignment, and we have started those conversations. We are not talking as separate players, but we see ourselves as one, but playing different roles within that ecosystem. And that's why that conversation with the market players, the developers, the financiers, stakeholders has been able to help us to fashion a set of possible interventions to help us to ensure that we accelerate this program, and in fact we are able to improve on its benefits, both transformational and developmental. And we have seen from the 9 bid windows that there's a huge amount of potential out of this program. So thank you very much.